Hi everybody, welcome back to the Crime Lab. So today we're going to be talking about Josh Guimond. I think that's how you pronounce his first name or last name. So this guy was actually somebody who disappeared back in 2002. He was 20 at the time. A little bit about him: he was born June of 1982. Parents were Lisa and Brian. When he was 4, he moved from Redwood Falls to Maple Lake. And then he graduated from Maple Lake High School. He was valedictorian and class president. So pretty smart kid, pretty successful considering everything. And like I said, he was 20 years old at the time of his disappearance. He was a junior at St. John's College over in Minnesota. He was an honor student majoring in political science, and he was considering continuing his education in political science or going to law school and being a lawyer. And he was also a member of his pre-law society where he debated various things. He's kind of part of their debate team. And he played an instrument in his college's wind society. So, a little bit about his disappearance. By the time of his disappearance in November of 2002, like I said, he was about 20 years old at the time. There had been a number of attacks, attempted abductions, and stalkings of different men in the area. Which I know a lot of us hear about women being stalked and attacked, but in this case, there was a lot of men that were being pursued in that way. And so he lived on campus in the St. Mar dorm, and where he was going the night of his disappearance, he had gone to a party at the Metton Court dorm, which is only like a 3 to 5 minute walk from the St. Mar dorm. So he was very, very close to where he was living. So just after 11 p.m. On the night of his disappearance, November 9th, him and a bunch of his friends left St. Mar to go to Metton Court to go to a party, have some drinks with friends, play some poker. There was about 8 or 10 other students that were there. And the friends that he went with said that he didn't take his wallet, his glasses, nothing really that was like vital for if he was going to do anything after the party. He just kind of left that at his dorm. So nobody really thought much of it. Nobody said anything seemed off about him that night. So when they got there, he started playing poker with about 10 other people and had a few beers. His friends say 7 to 12, but none of them said that he actually appeared to be drunk. Kind of indicating that he may have had a higher tolerance for alcohol. But yeah, he did not appear drunk at the time. And then Josh left the party, from what authorities and investigators can determine, about 11:45. Some of the people, although he didn't say anything to his friends when he left, the people that did notice that he was gone either assumed that he was just going to the bathroom that was just down the hall because he was in a dorm, or that he had gone back to St. Mar's to sleep off the alcohol. Like I said, he didn't really say anything to anybody. It was just kind of he just decided he was gonna leave. And then they did note when the investigation started that he was last seeing a pair of jeans and one of their university's sweatshirts, which, considering that it was November in Minnesota, anybody that knows Minnesota around that time of year knows that it starts getting cold at night. That's about the time of year that it will, if it hasn't already, it's starting to dip below freezing at night. So that would have not been an outfit to wear if you're planning on staying outside for a long period at night. I'm from that part of the world. I live in northwestern Wisconsin, so I speak from experience. That is a time of year where it's, a hoodie and jeans will get you where you need to go, but it's not for being outside for long periods. And from what investigators could find, the last known sighting of Josh, was near Stump Lake between 12:15 and 12:30 on the bridge that was between the buildings, between Menton Circle and St. Mar. So they don't really know exactly which direction he was headed, if he was headed to St. Mar or if he was headed back to Metancourt, but that was his last known whereabouts. So beyond that, some of this is like, they know it was somebody, but they can't guarantee that it was Josh in every situation. So, like I said, they don't know if he went back to St. Mar or not. They just know that he had left Metancourt after the party at about 11:45. Since then, there's been no activity on his credit card. Although that same night, neighboring residents in his dorm said that there's loud music coming from his dorm between about 11:50 and about 12:30, so about a 40-minute time span. And they knew that somebody was actively listening to it actively in the room because songs were being skipped. So, especially with those sorts of computers at the time, you have to manually skip the songs. You can't just do it remotely like you're able to now. But they can't verify that it was Josh or somebody else that had access to the room. About 15 minutes after he had left the party, when his friends really started realizing he wasn't coming back, his friends started trying to get a hold of Josh. This was a time before smartphones and before cell phones were readily available to everybody. So a lot of colleges had phones in each dorm room. So his friends tried calling their room, Josh's room, and they weren't able to get a hold of him. So after a night of trying, his friends started talking to other friends and being like, hey, have you seen Josh? And they're like, no, we haven't. We haven't seen him since yesterday, or, whenever they last saw him. So his friends got a hold of Josh's parents to be like, hey, have you seen Josh at all? And they're like, no, what's going on? So finally they reported Josh as missing to campus security and to the sheriff's department. And this was about that same time when Josh didn't show up to a mock trial for the pre-law society. Those people started getting worried as well. So at that point, everybody kind of started converging together that knew Josh or was close to Josh to be like, hey, something's wrong. And like I said, that was about the same time that the sheriff's office was notified that he was missing. And about this same time, the smiley face murders were happening, which I will do a separate video on the smiley face murders because those are unsolved at this point, from my understanding. But essentially, people around the country were getting murdered near bodies of water, and authorities and investigators would find a smiley face painted or drawn somewhere nearby, which is why they were called the smiley face murders. Although Josh was seen last near Stump Lake, there was no smiley face, but just considering that it was happening around that same time, that's why that theory came up. So the investigation had a lot of different organizations involved. So it had the sheriff's office, it had the FBI, it had the National Guard, it had the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, the fire department, and a bunch of local volunteers. And of course, family, friends, community members, they were all interviewed and interrogated in the weeks after his disappearance. Sheriff's Department, all the investigators utilized several bloodhounds as well, because, if you have access to clothing or bedding, that's going to be a good bet that you're going to be able to find at least like a last known whereabouts, kind of considering everything. And since he was seen last, confirmed last near a lake, they used trained divers to search the lake multiple times, although no body was found, unfortunately. And once spring came, as bacteria, as many people know, as bacteria builds up after death, and this is not just in people, this is in animals, pretty much any living species. After something has died, the bacteria will start breaking down the body. Gases fill up the different cavities. And if something happens to die in water or is put into water after it's dead, that bacteria, once it starts really producing gas, will cause stuff to float. In this case, because, the theory was that he may have gone into the water in November, the bacteria would have been relatively dormant at the time because of the cold. So in theory, if he had been put into a body of water, or if he had fallen into a body of water, investigators were like, oh, once spring hits, the bacteria starts growing, gases start being produced. If his body is in the lake, it will then float. No body was found. So that ruled out the theory that he was in that particular lake because there was no body. And this goes for, like I said, any living creature that after death, this is what happens. So at that point, because they could determine that he was not in the lake, he was then considered a missing person, and the theory of possible abduction came up. And so they went back to his dorm room during this time, after the divers had determined, at least right now, they can't find a body. So they went back to his dorm room to look at his computer, his personal effects, see if there was something they could find from that. So they took a look at his computer, his personal computer. They found that somebody had attempted to wipe all of the information off of it. Not just like a search history, but everything. After several years and a lot of work, so this would have been about 2008, investigators were actually able to find a little bit of information that had not been wiped from the computer. From what they could find, it appeared that Josh had been talking to men, but using the persona of a woman. Investigators don't know exactly what was going on. They questioned Josh's friends and family. His friends and family had no idea, why that he was doing it, why he was doing it. And when showed the pictures that were on these profiles talking to men, his friends and family were like, we don't know who these people are. So they don't know exactly what was going on. There's a theory that Josh was exploring his sexuality by doing this. But again, this is just a theory. They really don't know 100% because we don't have Josh to confirm any details. But based off of that theory, they suspect that because Josh was doing this, he then arranged at least one meetup with one of these men that he was talking to, did unknown stuff. They don't know if it was like a date, go out, get drinks, dinner, whatever, or it was more of a sexual encounter. Investigators have no idea. But this is also where the abduction theory kind of ties in, where Josh could have arranged to meet up with one of these people and was abducted for who only knows. So that's where some of the theories kind of potentially tie into each other, but again, we don't have Josh to confirm nor deny anything. So then in 2022, not 2002, some more images were found on the computer, dating to about that same time. And so they were pulled, as well as some profiles of people that he was talking to. And those were distributed among people that were kind of involved in the investigation in some way, to see if they recognized anybody, as well as some of them were released to the public for identification. At this point, Josh is still considered a missing person. We don't know if he was ultimately, unfortunately, killed and his body disposed somewhere, or if he is somebody that is on the run and just kind of staying one step ahead of the investigators, or if he is completely taken on a new identity and is just really not wanting to be found. We don't know at this point, but, you know, there's really only room for speculation right now because we don't have answers to what happened.